Okay, guys, want to welcome you to the Sunday night video chat, the Mac Forum chat, as usual. We're running a little bit behind schedule today. Had a power outage earlier, managed to work around that, and we're back. Looks like it's going to be a typical Sunday. We're going to try to keep it, keep the pacing going today, and maybe get it going a little bit. Go for about an hour, give or take a few minutes, maybe a little less. We have a couple other things we need to take care of tonight. One of the things I want to be sure and mention to you, coming up on the show tonight, not all of this info got into the forum thread, but we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about using Migration Assistant, and a couple tips there. Also, a tip about iTunes. Both of those were contributed by Mac Forum member Mac and Win, you know as Jake. He posted those two comments in the thread this week, and I got to look at both of the posts and realize that they take care of a problem. One of them is not something that I would have thought of doing with iTunes. It's a fairly simple solution to a problem. And then also we have we also have the Migration Assistant tip, which Jake posted. That appeared in a couple of threads in the forum, just because it happened to take care of a problem that a couple of users were having. And then also tonight I have I'll put in the show notes in the comment section after the show, a link to a post on the Apple discussion forum having to do with installing malware / installing malware. The title of the thread will lead you to believe that it's about how to install malware on somebody's computer. What it is about is some of the tricks that these installers use, and what some things that you and as a user can be on the lookout for. We've posted similar comments in a number of threads in Mac Forum. These tips are all consolidated in one post with some visual examples of that. So we'll get to that in just a second. First of all, for the site roundup, we have a total of 278,857 threads, 1,541,474 posts, and 281,135 members. The newest of which is Vanton. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that screen name. Always nice to welcome new members to the forum community. Welcome to you and to all of our new members this week. We've had a few new members in recent weeks that are already contributing valuable comments to some of the threads. So jump right in, guys, with your questions, comments, or if you have clarification or any questions about anything. So let's move on and get right down to some of the events and things that came up this week. Rad Dave will not be joining us. I had hoped to have Jake join us tonight, but they are both out and about enjoying life this weekend. Perhaps we can get them together for a future episode. And I'll be keeping an eye on the comments page as well, trying to have both of those open on my MacBook Pro screen's a little weird, but we'll periodically check back and see if there are any comments. So feel free to post a comment or a question. Let's get right down to business here. Couple of things this week. iOS 8 hit. It's no longer in beta. It's available. I have it on the iPad. It's the only device at the moment that will run it for me. You cannot run it on any iPhone lower than the iPhone 4S. Officially, that's the requirement. Anything 4S and above. I have seen some posts that say that it does not run well on the 4S, but I have not checked that out at this point. I don't know how much you can check that out. There's always going to be someone having a little difficulty, no matter what the requirements are. But that's out. One of the things that I like about it, and I've only experimented with it for a little bit of time in the last day or so, but one of the things that I like about it now is the predictive feature that is built into the keyboard. When I was typing the post earlier announcing the forum chat, as I started typing several of the sentences, not only did it offer corrections and guesses about the word that I was trying to type, but in some cases it would predict what the next word would be. For example, when I started typing the I and then hit H8 to do have, it predicted that would be the next one, and I could tap on that and fill in both words with one tap. I think as I get used to that, it's going to speed things up for me a little bit. That will solve one of the problems that I've always had with using the iOS keyboards, be it on the phone or on the iPad. I'm going to be looking at some of the other features in the coming days as I have a little time to play with it and give it a good once-over. I will say that one of the things that I like is being able to, I got a chance this weekend to experiment a little bit with the continuity features. I picked up my phone and I realized that I had missed a FaceTime call from a friend of mine. And so I called him, and then I called him back, and I had him call me again because I wanted to find out how the continuity features were going to work. I have been running the Yosemite public beta. It's on iteration 3 of the public beta. The developer beta is up to something like 7 or 8. But I'm running version 3 of the public beta, and I wanted to see how it would handle passing off a FaceTime phone. In the past, when you had a FaceTime call going on one device, you had to, and you wanted to switch it, you had to completely back out of that call and initiate another call. What I was able to do this time is when he called me and I wanted to try to pick that call up on the other device, I just initiated another call with him, and he got it on his phone, and on his iPad rather, and when he chose one, the other call closed out, so you're down to one call. There's probably a more seamless way of explaining that, a more seamless way of doing it, but what it boils down to is we were able to relatively easily switch the call between devices without having to go through a lot of headache and jump through a lot of rigmarole as we've done in the past. That's one of the things that I like, even though I don't make a lot of FaceTime calls right now. I hope to do more of that in the future. I really have, from day one, been more impressed with FaceTime than with Skype. Skype has never performed as well for me as it has for some of our members. And also, right now, since my one buddy moved over to the Mac and uses FaceTime, most of the people who are likely to call me are using FaceTime, and therefore I really have very little need for Skype. I keep it around for those folks that don't have FaceTime, but I rarely have the app open anymore because of that. So that's one thing I noticed that I really like, is that it seemed to handle the they handle everything well. Everything shifted focus between the two chat situations really well. Didn't take a lot of headache and didn't cause a lot of grief. So when the final release of Yosemite comes out, if you've already moved to iOS 8, be sure you check that feature out. Yosemite has been working well for me. There's still a few kinks here and there that some of our members have been reported. But as far as stability is concerned, I have not had a lot of trouble with that. I'm still at a point of shifting back and forth between Yosemite and Maverick. I have not put Yosemite on my primary drive yet, and there are still a couple of things that I need Maverick for. For example, right now with the Bluetooth headset that I have, it does not seem to work under Yosemite, whereas it recognizes immediately when I'm in Maverick. So anytime I'm doing anything that involves that, I end up switching. I switched to Maverick tonight to do the podcast, the video cast, simply because the drive that has Yosemite on it is an external drive. I didn't feel like carrying it out in the living room. I have run the chat before using Yosemite, and it's worked well. I have not had a lot of problem. There have been a few visual tweaks here and there that seem to be getting fixed with each iteration, and other than that, it's behaved very well for me. Okay, let's move on now to some of Jake's tips. As I said in a forum post, this might be a week that we refer to as the Mac and Win show, because he posted a couple of tips this week that caught my attention because they make use of something that I had not. One of them clears up something that I sometimes have difficulty explaining, and the other one clears up an iTunes issue that I've had before, and I never thought of this particular workaround for it. I'm going to pull up those pages one by one just to kind of make sure that I have the right thing up. Let's first deal with iTunes. You will find situations sometimes as you move from hard drive to hard drive. You find that sometimes, let's say you've got some of your music on an external drive. That drive is not mounted when you launch iTunes. iTunes can't find your library, and that presents an issue. And then you discover that you have songs that iTunes can't find, and you're trying to locate those songs and figure out what's going on. Well, I've done all kinds of things to try to do that. iTunes used to put an exclamation point by those songs. I've done a number of other things to do it. Well, old Jake came up with a different idea. And essentially what he's doing, I won't go through all of the steps here because he outlines them well in his forum post, but basically it involves opening iTunes, putting the view into show the list of songs. You're not looking at it at icon level, you're looking at the list of songs. Right-clicking on the bar just above the columns and show so that you're in column format, and set it up to show you beats per minute. Once the beats per minute column is visible, you're going to edit. You want to edit all of them, all right? And right-click on any of the songs, choosing Get Info, and you answer yes. You want to edit them. And for the beats per minute entry, you're going to enter 999. Okay? And iTunes will going to go out and set the beats per minute for every file that you've selected to to a beat per minute of 999. In other words, every song that iTunes finds, it's going to set the beats per minute to 999. Because it can't find some of the songs, the beats per minute count on those is unchanged. Okay? Now, when you click that beats per minute column, it's going to sort everything by beats per minute. All the files that have been set to 999, which is the ones that iTunes can find, will be together. All the ones that iTunes could not find will be together in a group. And then you can just delete the group that iTunes could not find. That is a brilliant idea. I've had to do this a couple of times because of problems with my iTunes library. I wish I had thought to do this the last time I had to do it, had to solve this problem. It would have been much better than what I was doing, basically scrolling through, finding them one by one or two by two. Jake, if you were nearby, I'd buy you a beverage, my friend. That's going to save me a lot of time, although hopefully I don't run into that problem very much anymore. I'm going to post a link to this post in the show notes, down in the bottom in the comment section after the show. It will lay out for you, and he also cleans this procedure up, what to do when you're done. That's included in his post as well. And that, as a reminder, I want to remind you, this is another reason why you would want to have a good backup of your iTunes library because of situations like this. I want to thank Jake for that post. That really solves some interesting issues for some of us with iTunes library. And my wonder is, I have not played with this yet, so I'm not going to speculate about this, but I wonder if you could use this beat per minute trick as a sorting mechanism for other iTunes tasks that are normally time consuming. I'm going to have to experiment with that a little bit and see how that works out. I'm wondering if there aren't some other situations where you could sort by beat per minute, and by changing what you do with the information, solve other issues. Jake, if you happen to catch this show and you know of any other situations, feel free to post and let us know, and perhaps we can have you in on next week's show and talk about this a little bit more. It's always good to have a second voice in the show. The other thread that Jake was contributing to had to do with a user having issues with Migration Assistant and not realizing where Migration Assistant had put a bunch of files that had been moved over. Now, for those of you that are not necessarily 100% familiar with this, Migration Assistant is a little utility that Apple has created, and is very helpful in terms of moving data files, both either from a PC to a Mac, from one Mac to another, or from a series of backup files onto a Mac. Now, a couple things I'm going to tell you about that. First of all, if you run into a situation where Migration Assistant hangs up partway through a file transfer, and you have to force quit it, go back and rerun Migration Assistant. I've had a couple of instances where I had that issue. Migration Assistant seemed like it was going to start. It hung up and did not finish. And when I went back later and force quit and went back later, it worked fine. So If you discover that you are having this issue where it doesn't run, then go ahead and try that and see if that solves your issue. The other problem, though, is that we've had a situation a couple of times in the forum now where various users have used Migration Assistant to transfer files from one, either from a backup or from Mac or from PC onto the Mac. And then they either don't know where the files are, or the files are not where they expected them to be. Okay, so let me see if I can explain to you what's happening without adding to the confusion. First of all, Migration Assistant tries to mimic the file structure that you had. So if you've got your files inside the document folder and they're sorted, pictures and documents and all of these different types of documents in the document folder, that's what Migration Assistant tries to do. And here's the catch. If I run Migration Assistant right out of the box before I create a user account, what it's going to do, unless I tell it otherwise, is to take the account that I'm pulling data from and move it over to the new Mac. Everything will be. So if I let's say I have a Mac, I've got the account the way I want it, okay, the time to run Migration Assistant is before you create a user account on that Mac. Because what's going to happen is, let's say you've got an old Mac with the user account named Bob. You get a new Mac and you create a new user account. And let's just, for the sake of argument, give that a different name, just for purposes of discussion. Let's say it's Charlie. You want it to put him in Charlie because that's going to be your primary account. That's not really what it's expecting to do. It found them in an account named Bob. That's where it's expecting to put them. So you now have a situation where the account Charlie that you want to be your main account doesn't have your files, and this other account that Migration Assistant created has your files. What do you do? There are two ways to deal with this. One of them is run Migration Assistant right off the bat before you do anything else. That way it'll move things from the old account over to the new machine. The account name will stay the same. You probably won't have permissions issues, any of those things. Okay. If, however, you find that you did not run Migration Assistant first thing, and it has now put your files in a different account, here's the way that you can handle this without a lot of headache. You can do one of two things. Either delete, now make sure you haven't gotten rid of your data yet off the original machine, okay? Don't do anything to the data on the original machine or the original backup set until you know everything is the way you want it. Go back and get rid of the account that Migration Assistant created, and get rid of your new account and leave just the one. If you got, but probably your confusion is that you have now two accounts. You've got the old account, which has a lot of files in it, and you've got this new account that you created inadvertently. It might have one or two files in it. Here's the best way to get those somewhat consolidated in one place. You could take the file. I would probably, if I wanted to preserve the old user account, I would think in terms of, I'm going to get rid of the new ones, because that's the smallest number of files to move. You can log into that account that you just created on the new machine and either copy your files over to a flash drive, hard drive, something of that nature, log out of the first account, go into the old account where all the files are, put the new files there. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, and this is probably a little smoother because you don't have to worry about having to have drive space. If you open the user folder in the on your main hard drive, you open the user folder. There is a user there called shared. When you drop something in the shared folder, any other user on that Mac can get a look at that content. So here's what you can do. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that your first account was named Bob. You've inadvertently created an account named Charlie, and it's got some files in it. You want to move them into Bob with the idea of consolidating everything into one account. You could transfer it by by flash drive, logging in, logging out, that kind of thing. But if you have a lot of files to transfer, that may not work. They may not all fit at one time. Here's what you can do. Take the files in the Charlie account that you want to move. Select those files and move them to the shared folder, that shared user folder that's in the system, that's in the main level of the hard drive. When you get that done, when they're moved, either moved or copied, once you get that done, now you can log into your original account that we call Bob for purposes of discussion, move the files out of the shared account and into the account called Bob. Now, depending upon whether you chose to move the files or copy them, you may have copies of your files in the shared folder and in the new account. Once you're done and everything is as you want it, you can safely delete those. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the key sequence to differentiate in the Finder between copy and move. But what you're essentially doing is using the shared folder to move things from one account into the account that you want them into. But this whole process can be avoided by running Migration Assistant right off the bat and not creating that second account in the first place. So that should give you an idea how to handle this kind of situation. Once again, thanks to Jake for clarifying that for us. It's something that I knew at the gut level. I don't use Migration Assistant very often, so sometimes I have a little trouble including that. We might try to talk Jake into writing up a little summary of Migration Assistant for the blog. So if you see him traversing the forum, twist his arm nicely and see if we can talk him into doing that. Jake, looks like we've got a piece of work out there for you if you're interested at all. It's always nice to get tips from our users. We have a very knowledgeable user base in the forum, and it shows all the time. And I want to point out, Jake is his post count is somewhere in the couple thousand range. Okay, there are a number of our users that have fewer posts than he does, and there are a number of our users that have more posts than he does. I don't think post count alone is the determiner for how helpful you can be. We've had situations where people who are relatively new to the Mac know an answer. They're new to the forum. They've been there, maybe they've got 50 posts, and they know the answer to a question. Okay? You don't have to be the poster that has 10,000 posts to know the answer. If you know it, great, share the info. If you don't know, but you have a question that might clarify things, do that as well, because one of the problems with Help Forum is that sometimes it's a little difficult to communicate exactly what you intended, either because English is not your native language, or because that's just the nature of asynchronous communication. and the fact that we're not all face to face in the same room. You know, if we were face to face, then I could say, hey, something is wrong. You know, I could say, hey, wait a minute, something is wrong. Go back and explain this. Because we're not sitting face to face, I can't do that. So do join in when you've got something positive to contribute or a question to ask. And finally tonight, before we call it quits, I do want to mention one other thing, and this is something else that I will put in the show note. There have been a number of discussions over the last several weeks where members have had adware start to pop up on their Mac. They're not viruses in the true sense of the word, but they are malware. And so the question becomes a twofold thing. One, how did I get it? And two, how do I get rid of it? Well, what I'm about to point you to in the show note is something that explains how you might have gotten it. We've discussed some of these techniques in our in the forum in various threads, but what we have is I ran into a post last night. I was on the Apple discussion forum looking up some info on Automator. I hit there about once a week, check through the posts on Automator, which is a interesting little habit that I've started to check out. And I periodically go there to see if either A, I can answer a question for somebody, or B, if somebody is doing something that I don't understand how to do in Automator. And that is frequently the case. Somebody is doing something that either did not occur to me or something that I had not tried. And as I was going through posts last night, I ran across a post from someone on the Apple discussion forum. And I apologize to him for not mentioning his name. I can't seem to pull that post up at the moment. I'm having a little problem with the link. I'm going to have to go back and find it. But he goes into some degree of detail about how you might have accidentally picked up one of these pieces of malware, how they might have gotten installed. Right down to, complete with pictures, some of the things that might be an indicator of a red flag, so to speak. It's a very good discussion. Although it is kind of lengthy in the sense that it takes a bit of time to go through, it is not hyper-technical. Even if you are relatively new to the Mac, I think you can probably pick up on the gist of it very quickly. It's the length of it is entirely because he goes through step by step and looks at the major ways that you might have acquired any given piece of malware. So it's an excellent thing to read through. I encourage you to check that out in the coming days. It may be of help to you, particularly if you are somewhat new to the Mac and installing software. All right. I see by the clock on the wall that we've been going at this for about 35 minutes now. You're probably tired of hearing me blather on about various things. I will say today was a good football day. As you can tell, I got the Saints mug handy here. Both the Saints and Cowboys won. And I managed to, unfortunately, I'm a little cheesed off. If it was a good football day, why am I cheesed off? Well, let's put it this way. Right at the end of halftime, we had a power outage. So when the power goes out, the Cowboys are behind 21-10. When the power comes back on, there was only about 2 minutes left in the game. So I missed the entirety of the third and 99% of the fourth quarter, which means that by the time they came back up, they were already leading, and I didn't get to see the highlights of how they got there. And of course, I did not see the Saints game this week because Fox had the Cowboy game. My Fox affiliate had the Cowboys game. I hate it when the Saints and Cowboys are playing at the same time because it means that we end up choosing, if they're both on Fox, in other words, they're both playing NFC opponents. If the game's on Fox, that means we get one or the other, not both. We do get both on the Sundays where they're playing at different times. I can remember when I was a kid watching on the antenna before we had cable, or actually even after we had cable, when the NFC teams were on CBS, and we had two CBS affiliates within range of us on the cable system, and one of them carried the Saints game, one of them carried the Cowboy game, and I would virtually wear out the batteries in the remote control, flipping between the two games. At one point, it was somewhat simple because the Saints were going through something of a down cycle for a couple of years there, and so if I had to pick a game, sometimes I'd watch the Cowboys game and tune in to the Saints games and see what's going on. Particularly the year the Saints went 1-15, I would kind of flip back and forth between them. Once in a while, I was using an old TV that had the rotary tuner, no remote, and I'd be sitting there flipping back and forth. I think I broke the dial on a TV set or two, flipping back and forth between the two games. But that's it. I wouldn't call myself what you would call a football fanatic. I tend to watch certain games depending on who's playing. Did catch a little bit of the Denver and Seattle game, mainly because I started getting interested in Peyton Manning's career a couple of years ago when he was about to break a record. Prior to that, I did not watch very much of the AFC, and I still to this day don't specifically go out and watch the Peyton Manning games, although he is in many ways a throwback kind of quarterback in terms of understanding the game and things that many quarterbacks can't do. For some reason, he has not had the level of success in the postseason that some people have expected, partly because of encountering things like the New England Patriots and partly just dumb luck. But anyway, next week I think is going to be interesting for me. I always have an interesting dilemma when the Saints and the Cowboys have to play each other, because those are the only two teams that I follow regularly. And I always have an interesting dilemma when they play each other, because you kind of don't know who to root for. The last couple of years I've been in, when I get into that situation, I've been rooting for the Saints. They've had a little more playoff experience in recent years than the Cowboys had. So I kind of like to see them get into the playoffs and go as far as they can. Second Lombardi Trophy would look real good down in New Orleans. That would be a good thing. And of course, that's kind of the way Sunday went. I missed, as I say, most of the Cowboy game and managed to catch bits and pieces of Seattle, Denver, and that'll do me for football for the week. Sometimes I watch Monday nights, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on who's playing and what else I have going on at the time. This week, might watch a few plays, might not. Never know. But anyway, that's going to do it for our Mac-related news for this week. I'm going to try to get, during the coming week, to play around with iOS 8 a little bit more and try to experiment with some of the integration between iOS 8 and Yosemite. Got a couple other things I want to check out as far as going through that. look for the links to the things that we discussed about in the show notes. I'm going to try to get those up right after the show. May take a little bit longer because I've got to track down that one link. Apparently the one that I had is not working at the moment, so we'll see what's going on there. But hopefully that will provide you with some useful information. Check in the Mac forum during the week and see what's going on in the forum. Post your contribution, and maybe your name will appear in next week's Mac Forum Sunday Chat. Until next week, this is your host, Sly Dude. I'll be back next week. Hopefully Dave will be back with us, and perhaps if we do a little arm twisting, we can get Jake to come in and join us. I PM'd him earlier in the week about, or yesterday rather, about joining us. He unfortunately had some commitments this evening, couldn't make it, but hopefully we'll have him in, if not next week, then in the very near future. So until next week, I hope you enjoy your week and have fun with your Mac. And this is your host, Sly Dude, for the Mac Forum Video Chat, and I will see you next Sunday.